So what are you guys working on now?
Swan Lake. You know it?
No, not really. Heard of it. What's it about?
It's about a girl who gets turned into a swan, and she needs love to break the spell. But her prince falls for the wrong girl, so she kills herself.
Welcome to A Niche Retelling, the podcast where we explore all the ways old tales are made new. I'm your host, Jasmine Garcia. Happy Pride Month, dear listeners. Correction.
No! What happened to my sweet girl, huh? She's gone! You want answers? Fight for them. Eddie?
No, let me go.
Eddie!
Let me go.
I'm sorry!
Jesus, have you not? You've done enough!
I'm the Swan Queen. You're the one who never left the pool. I'm sorry. Eddie! Eddie!
Happy Wrath Month, everyone. And joining me today is...
I'm Sam Marchioni, and I could be brilliant, but I'm a coward.
I wouldn't go that far, my god, and I also wouldn't be quoting that asshole. Today we are going to be covering Black Swan.
Greetings, I am IER-60, Star Wars Retelling Connections. Point of intersection found. This is a degree 2. Natalie Portman plays the lead role of Padme Amidala in the prequel trilogy.
What is probably the most meta of meta retellings of Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. It got Natalie Portman her Oscar, and as far as meta retellings go, it's definitely the darkest. So with that said, since it is just the two of us, let's talk about our connections to Swan Lake.
Okay, so I've never, unfortunately, seen the ballet. I do want to see the Matthew Bourne one where it's, like, super duper gay. But growing up, 90s kid, so of course I had to have The Swan Princess on VHS, and I was obsessed with it. I looked like Odette, so she was quote-unquote my princess. I had a teensy-weensy little crush on Derek, which I think also helped transfer me into my Phantom era because Howard McGillen, my love.
Yep.
I watched the sequels.
Right, the original trilogy.
There are no other sequels unless, of course, you are Laura Crone and you are making extensive takedowns of them. Thank you for your service, Laura.
You're braver than any of us.
And then I watched this movie purely because Sebastian Stan was in it, and Once Upon a Time had him in the show, and I was like, oh, I like Sebastian Stan, so I'll watch this movie. I had no idea what was going to happen in this movie, so, that was a mistake. And then I also, around the same time, or maybe like a year later, I came across Mercedes Lackey's The Black Swan, which is a Wicked-esque version of the story that includes major character revision / POV for Odile and some questionable things done with the Prince character, whom Lackey uses the Siegfried name for. That's a book I have a lot of complicated feelings about, but that's for another day. Oh, shit, and the Barbie movies. I forgot about the Barbie movies.
Oh yes, go on about the
Barbie
movies,
of Swan Lake. Not the best Barbie movie, but, you know, pretty dancing and some fun stuff in there. And also Barbie and the Pink Shoes. Iconic. S tier. Love it. Listen to the Pink Isle podcast episodes of both those movies. And now I'm done.
You're good. I had aged out of the Barbie movies by that point, I think.
You never age out of the Barbie movies. Barbie is forever.
Well, yes, Barbie is forever. That is what we learned from last year. And it's interesting you bring up Barbie because I do make a reference to that in my notes at some point, but we'll get to that. Like you, yeah, I adored the first 3 Swan Princess movies. I did not own the VHS. It was one of those videos that I just kept on borrowing from the library. It was basically a cycle of the Swan Princess trilogy, that one Rumpelstiltskin movie with Amy Irving, Muppet Classic Theater, and Muppet Treasure Island. Sometime later, I did end up rewatching it because I was part of an RP group that was basically Hogwarts. Hogwarts for fairy tale characters. So I was like, oh, maybe I want to do a Swan Princess thing. And I wouldn't say it doesn't hold up, but it definitely wasn't the mind-blowing thing that I remembered it being. But I do still have a lot of affection for it, especially that first number, and of course the animation of the Swan transformations. And I too actually have a copy of the Black Swan, though the one time I did try to read it, I found it kind of boring and insufferable. I might try it again at some point, but the general idea of Odile kind of having a lot of internalized misogyny regarding the women that Rothbart kidnaps did end up inspiring. Shammy and I mentioned that we did a fairy tale series of just graphics and blurbs on Tumblr, the Found Sister series, so we did also do our own super duper gay version of Swan Lake where Odile and Odette do actually end up falling in love. I will definitely be putting it on the queue. Or I guess Shammy will, because let's face it, she runs that blog.
God works hard, Shammy works harder.
God, ain't that the truth. And as for Black Swan, it was one of those movies that I was always interested in watching, because I think everyone around that time who liked women had a little bit of a crush on Natalie Portman at the very least. While I have not seen any ballets, really, I've always wanted to. And when I was a little kid, I did want to be a ballerina for a little while. But a combination of economic stuff and also the fact that I was already a chubby girl meant that was kind of made inaccessible to me, unfortunately.
I started out in ballet classes, and then it turned out that I had a small curve to my spine because one of my legs is slightly longer than the other, so I didn't continue in my ballet classes.
There's a lot of accessibility issues when it comes to ballet. And we'll go into, it is bad, but also maybe kind of blessing in disguise considering some of the stuff that we know about it. I'm only half joking, but maybe we should ban ballet and football.
Oh, I'm never joking about banning football. Football is terrible.
And the funny thing is, do you remember that video series, Sassy Gay Friend?
Yes! And I remember that she was a subject of one of them.
She was indeed. I saw that before I saw Black Swan, weirdly enough.
Oh no, the spoiler!
The spoiler did not bother me. It did not ruin it when I did eventually wind up watching it years later. I just loved Sassy Gay Friend so much that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna watch this anyway. I don't know, I guess it just didn't lessen the impact, even if you know what's coming, it's like, ah!
And it is kind of a movie that's less about the plot and more about the feelings.
I would argue this is very much a vibes movie. I can definitely see someone just really loving the vibe of it if you are a particularly dark and twisted person like I am.
Getting this movie even made, it's kind of it's shocking Natalie Portman lived through this, because she and Darren Aronofsky, it took them a really long time. And at one point he had wanted to include it as a subplot in The Wrestler, but then things just kept happening, and when it finally did happen, Natalie Portman kept getting injured on the set to the point she told them to take away her trailer so they could hire a medic. And that scene when she has a physical therapy session in the movie, that is an actual physical therapy session.
Oh my god, I didn't know that. That's insane.
Everybody talks about the dance double controversy and likes to posit that the reason she won the Oscar is because Fox Searchlight was trying to sell the notion that she did all the dancing. And I'm like, I know we all think actors are stupid, but actors are not that stupid. They know she had a double. There's no way they did not know. She had the perfect fucking Oscar campaign narrative.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially with what you're saying, she absolutely killed herself trying to do this.
So this was a passion project for her. She's in every scene of the movie. She's playing a queer character, going through a mental breakdown in a branch of the performing arts. And also, this is a redemption arc for her, making the transition from child actress to her unfairly maligned time in the prequels to her success in Closer, to then trying to navigate becoming a proper, quote-unquote, proper movie star through that weird time between 2004 and 2006 when she was doing crap like The Other Boleyn Girl and Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium and stuff like that. And, it is a juicy as hell role. I would argue the sequence that's known as the Night of Terror that starts when she's in the theater with the ghost light and ends with her turning into a swan, that alone gets you an Oscar.
Yeah, no, she absolutely murdered this role. She murdered everybody, and I was the witness. Like, you watch this movie, and it's just like, yeah, no, you earned that Oscar. I don't care if you didn't do the dancing, because, like, first off, it's just not something that's realistic to expect unless you have a ballet background.
There's arguments about what counted as doing the dancing, because she had two dance doubles, Kimberly Prosa and the more famous now of the two because of the controversy, Sarah Lane. And Sarah Lane and Kimberly Prosa's main job was there to do the footwork, the on-point stuff, because you cannot expect someone who's only trained for a year to be on point. That's just not realistic. But apparently what they would tend to do is they would have Natalie Portman dance the sequence in flat ballet shoes, and then Kimberly or Sarah would do the points and the fouettes and stuff like that.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, this movie shows us just how much ballerinas destroy their own feet. Like for all of the ways that it displays how beautiful ballet can be, it absolutely shows all of the ways it could be very, very ugly.
From the sound of it, Sarah Lane's beef was never with Portman. It was more with the studio for, like, trying to sell the image to the public. And it's like, no, ballerinas work fucking hard and you can't do this in a year.
Yeah, no, that's very, very fair. And speaking of bullshit that the people in charge tried to do, I mean, I think everyone's heard the story of how Aronofsky tried to turn Portman and Kunis against each other. God, I'm so fucking mad at you, Mila Kunis, for slightly dampening your performance in this movie because you're so good in it.
I mean, what is fucking funny about that is that apparently he tried to do that, but it didn't work.
Exactly. They were just so
because he's like, Natalie's doing better than you, or Mila's doing better than you, and Natalie's like, oh my god, you're doing such a good job. Total Kubrick moment from Aronofsky, but oh boy, did it not work like that.
Yeah, no, and I am so delighted by the fact that it didn't work the way he wanted it to. Like, that story always just warms my heart, even if, again, it is slightly tainted now.
Also, like, the fact that Natalie Portman has, on the record, confirmed Mila Kunis is a better kisser than Ashton Kutcher. She called Mila Sweet Lips.
Oh, I didn't hear about that. Okay.
And as long as we're getting the controversies out of the way, should we talk about He of the Giant Forehead?
Let's do.
Yeah, so just to finish getting it out of the way. Benjamin Millepied, the French dancer who is both the choreographer of the film and also plays the prince, the guy whom Vincent Cassel asks, would you fuck that girl? And then, at the time, he was dating another woman. He was dating Isabella Boylston, who is an accomplished ballerina in her own right. If you've seen the movie Red Sparrow, she doubled for Jennifer Lawrence. But I don't know the exact timeline, and I have no idea how much anybody knew, because I'm not a freaking mind reader, but the end result was he and Natalie Portman hooked up during the movie, fell in love, she got pregnant, they got married for 11 years, had another kid, and then he cheated on her with an environmental activist, and now they are divorced.
Whee! And also since then, Mila Kunis threw her hat in the ring to defend Danny Masterson, so that's also swell.
God damn it, Mila.
God damn it, Mila. Let me be clear. I am going to be talking a lot about how much I enjoy her in this movie. Please let it be known, this is not an endorsement of her as a person whatsoever. As far as I'm aware, she was not doing shitty shit like that, back then at least.
If I had a nickel for every dumb and terrible thing somebody in the elite branches of the entertainment industry did something shitty or stupid, I'd have enough nickels to be in the entertainment industry full time.
Yeah, same. And it's interesting you mentioned nickels, because I had 3 nickel situations while watching this movie in regards to our previous episode. On season 1 of Once Upon a Time, stage mom Barbara Hershey, Sebastian Stan. This is also the second episode in a row where we discuss the symbol of purity girl seeing somebody write a misogynistic slur on some glass in red.
Oh my god. Natalie Portman wrote that. Like, behind the scenes, she's the one who wrote that on the mirror.
And I love that.
And there's like behind the scene footage of her making a smiley face inside the O.
I have seen that and it's very funny. But yeah, it is because, yeah, Snow got tramp written on her car, and then you got the whore on the mirror. Like, I don't know. I just, again, there's some weird pairs of nickels with these past 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And what's great about this movie is we don't even need to do an IER TLDR for those people who don't know the story, because it does it for us in this movie. And let's get into it. So, like I said, I've always been an admirer of ballet, even though I don't really know all that much about it. I've never even seen a full ballet, but that opening sequence is absolutely stunning and reminds me of why I want to be more into it.
Dance in general is such a freaking underrated art form.
Oh, yeah.
I love a lot of how this movie plays with light and shadow. I know, like, we were gushing in Bound about light and shadow, and it's true here, too. Oh, although it's a lot more on the nose because of all the freaking mirrors as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this movie is definitely not one for subtlety, but I kind of love it for it. Because, I mean, it's just blatantly, where I'm actually going to quote Vincent Cassel's, "Hi again, sir. You're playing another creep."
That's just his default mode.
I hope there are roles that I would enjoy him more. Like, he's good at this, don't get me wrong. And at least in this case, they're trying to make him a creep. But, it's so funny how I had 2 notes regarding his whole, we're going to strip it down, make it visceral and real. For one thing, it's nice to know both ballet directors and theater directors keep on trying to do that same thing to the point where that in itself is a cliche. But also, too, it's kind of what this movie does with the Swan Lake story.
Yeah, to the point where I was actually kind of annoyed because there are portions of the ballet we see getting rehearsed, but then we don't get to see them in the final thing. And I'm like, come on!
That would have been neat, but I guess, they did want to keep it tight.
Yeah, no, I do get that.
But, that would be a bold move, though, if the whole back half we just saw the whole ballet for the last hour, or I don't know, how long is the ballet actually, now that I think about it?
No idea, because like I said, I've never seen it.
I was able to find it. It's about 145 minutes. So could you imagine the balls it would take to just have an hour of movie and then just 2 hours of ballet?
Martin Scorsese would do it.
Martin Scorsese would do it, and I would be a lot more likely to watch it. No offense to the Irishman. I would.
No, I get it. 3-hour movie, that's often too much. Okay, but you want to know who I think is really underrated in this movie?
Uh-huh.
Winona Ryder.
Absolutely, yes. She's one of my favorite actresses, and wasn't this one of her first roles after she got so stupidly basically canceled for shoplifting?
I think it might have been. It was definitely a comeback, and there was I'm sure that was another part of the meta-ness for Aronofsky, was Winona Ryder had a similar trajectory to Natalie Portman in that she successfully navigated out of child actress into promising young star of Hollywood, but then the stupid shoplifting thing happened, and so who better to play the quote-unquote dying swan?
The funny thing is, I think they didn't even advertise that she was in it, partially because of that. So, which, again, very, very stupid. And I am super glad we are living in the Winona-sance.
Yeah, I still haven't seen Stranger Things. You can't make me, but
no, that's
I don't know. Maybe I'll catch Beetlejuice.
I think I will too. I feel ashamed for it, but it actually does look at least a little fun.
Maybe. We'll see.
We'll see how it is. And I mean, I love Jenna Ortega.
Yeah. I do actually think, because Winona gives an amazing performance. Natalie gives an amazing performance, obviously. But the writing on this movie, it is so clearly, in so many places, a movie written by men.
Oh, yeah. Just the fact that we are having men trying to tackle purity culture and the impact this mainly female-dominated system that, but all the same, they're still under the thumb of mostly men. Yeah.
With Nina alone, Well, we might find out what it's like with a woman, because there is supposed to be a workshop for a Broadway turn that's being directed and choreographed by Sonia Tahe, who did Moulin Rouge, and the music's going to be by Dave Malloy, and they're going to have a book by Jen Silverman, so that's more women on the creative team, and that'd be interesting.
I would love to see what they could do there, especially with Dave Malloy involved. Oh
God, I'd love to see how he incorporates Tchaikovsky.
Oh, thank you for telling me this. I'm very excited. Don't get me wrong, like, the general narrative, it's just like, yeah, there's this very pure girl, almost to the point of childish, which, of course, I, as somebody who is surrounded by Funkos and old stuff from her childhood, I am not one to talk, but, you know, they're trying they basically make her seem as girlish as possible, and she needs to learn to be more like the Black Swan in order to be perfect. And it's just like, this is a fantastic movie, but God, do I feel a little uncomfy sometimes.
I mean, I don't know how concrete an intent this was, but there are at least theories that this is about Nina swinging between two different abusers who are trying to control her sexuality, because the fact that she lives with her mother, and her bedroom is so childish, and, you know, her mother's calling her sweet girl. Some people theorize that Erica, among other things, sexually abuses her daughter.
I got that vibe with this watch, to be honest. Like,
yeah, and
just like that one line about, he wanted you all to himself. I don't blame him. I immediately just went,
Yeah, and it's like, it's so clear that Erica is feeding into Nina's anorexia and bulimia and her anxiety. The scene where Nina masturbates and then realizes her mother is in the chair, sleep. That, oh my God.
Like, yeah, like, you shouldn't have to give your own room a look around like that. I unfortunately do very much believe it, and part of why Erica wants to keep her so childish is because that means she has more control over her. But then again, you got Thomas. I find it so fascinating. It's just like, Nina clearly thinks that he is her prince when he is actually her Rothbart.
I mean, he's not billed as Rothbart, because one of the things that this movie does is that it makes an analogy of who is who. Mm-hmm. It calls him the gentleman.
Fair enough,
Nina's the white swan, Lily's the black swan,
right.
Erica is called the queen, David is the prince, but...
I actually never noticed that. I feel so silly for that.
Yeah, Thomas is just called the gentleman.
But that is clearly using the term very loosely. So maybe she has got two Rothbarts then, who want to control her, basically. Thomas' whole deal is kind of where, weirdly enough, America Ferrera's whole speech in Barbie came in. It's just like, she's just doing, you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, we have to always be extraordinary. But somehow we're always doing it wrong.
You have to find a way to reject men's advances without damaging their egos. Because if you say yes to them, you're a tramp. But if you say no to them, you're a prude.
But honestly, like, the things where, like, Beth is saying, he said you were such a frigid little girl, did you suck his cock? And it just, you hear all those stories about how Natalie makes her movie debut with The Professional, and people immediately start creeping on her, so she cultivated a conservative and adult kind of image to fend that off. It didn't stop people from being creeps about her, but, like...
It's very much a, what am I supposed to do for you to knock this off?
And it's also another instance of men writing women and not understanding that it really doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, I could realistically see somebody like Beth, who is drunk and heartbroken, probably saying that just, you know, out of bitterness, but at the end of the day, I would have felt more comfortable about that if, again, we had gotten a more female-led perspective there.
Yeah. There's also just, I don't know, like, I'm thinking about the other people who are in Nina's circle when she's at the company, like Veronica, who feels kind of superfluous once Lily gets introduced.
Well, I think Because what I found really interesting in that first scene with her and the other dancers is, for all how entrenched she is in all the ballet bullshit, she is at least trying to come off as kinder than them, because, they're kind of gossiping about Beth, and, she's just like, oh, it's so sad. She's such a beautiful dancer, and pointing out, there are ballerinas who dance well into their 50s, and she's even the only one who gives Lily an answer when she does arrive. So, it does seem like she's at least trying not to buy into that level of quote-unquote cattiness, but again, coming from a male writer, it's a little icky.
This whole movie could just be subtitled Virgin Whore Dichotomy.
Yeah, which is intentional, at least.
It's a very unnuanced take on femininity. The fact that Nina goes from being in, all white to grays to black by the end.
I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
The fucking ending, though. Popular theory that her blood blossoming onto her costume is, menstrual blood and her finally becoming a woman and all that. But all I can think is, I'm sorry, she danced how long with a piece of glass in her stomach and then took the piece of glass out and never, bandaged it or anything, and it still didn't come bleeding out until that specific moment.
The whole thing, you're meant to question what's real and what's not when it comes to anything Nina sees, especially the weird shit. She thought that she killed Lily, for one thing. I wouldn't trust her perspective on anything.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. There's plenty of stuff that remains unclear throughout the movie. Did Lily actually fuck Thomas? And did Beth actually stab her face apart? Or did Nina do it? Or did Nina stab herself?
Because, obviously these women are meant to represent different parts of her. That's why you keep on seeing their faces, especially on her own face, on theirs, especially on Lily's.
It's good that the movie doesn't give us all the answers. It's just so unintentionally goofy at certain places as a result, but not goofy in a way where you can laugh at it.
Well, yeah, because as the sassy gay friend said,
what it's like to be uncomfortable for an hour and 50 minutes.
But in the best possible way, honestly. I do truly love this movie, and I do love what it's kind of trying to do with Swan Lake. The conversations it's trying to, at the very least, start regarding, the bullshit standards women in general have, ballerinas who, let's face it, kind of deal with that on hard mode.
Yeah. Honestly, it's really fucking funny to me that Nina, when she's prepping to be Swan Queen, she's like,
After Beth, do you really need another controversy?
First of all, A+ line read.
Yes.
But second of all, he's going to have such a scandal at the end of this. Because I don't believe Nina dies at the end. No, but that man they're gonna have such an investigation into him. He's probably gonna be disgraced. Nina's career is probably over.
Oh, yeah, probably. And honestly, for the best. This whole thing is killing her. That is one thing Erica does have right.
I just hope she doesn't go back to living with Erica.
No. She can't. You need to start fresh, honey. This is no.
Maybe go to San Francisco. I'm sure there are plenty of lesbians there.
Yeah. But yeah, I do want to kind of circle back to her relationship with her mother, because I'll admit for the first 20 minutes, I'm just I'm uncomfortable, partially because that little exchange when it's so pretty, that exchange, is it bad that it honestly reminds you of times when I'm silly with my own mother?
Well, no, I have those moments with my own mother too, but they feel much more organic, and in Nina's case, it feels like this is stuff Erica has basically trained her to do.
Yep, that's true.
Because I'd fully bet that Erica does not know about Nina's bulimia.
Oh, definitely
Only
not.
about the anorexia that she has clearly cultivated.
And then had the nerve to bring that giant cake there and make her feel bad. Listen, Nina absolutely should have felt okay with having that cake, but it's probably your fault she feels that way, Erica, and then you use that as a weapon, you manipulative bitch. Which, again, Barbara Hershey, you're way too good at that.
The longer this movie goes on, I'm like, did you really have it that bad, Regina?
Honestly, two bad Barbara Hershey moms can both be bad. There could be more than one bad Barbara Hershey mom.
I know, it's It's funny and I'm being silly.
Oh, I know. I loved it. Again, it's kind of weird that these two episodes ended up being back to back with all of the parallels there.
I'm going to briefly tangent because it makes me so fucking mad that in no season of Once Upon a Time did Emma ever get turned into a fucking swan.
Oh, I talked about that myself. I think it's a bullshit wasted opportunity. Like, why would you name your main character in your fairy tale show Swan if you were never going to touch Swan Lake? What sense does that make?
And don't tell me it's because she's the ugly duckling, because Rumpelstiltskin was how many people by the end of the show?
Exactly. And yeah, it's actually interesting you bring that up, because I did think of, because there is a lot of folklore surrounding swans, including one that's kind of similar to like Selkie folklore, where, you know, a swan can turn into a woman, but man can take her like feathers and she'll be stuck with him, basically. Like, I wonder if anyone's ever combined the Swan Lake story with something like that. Like, they kind of run
entirely
parallel to each
possible. Swan Lake is interesting in that it's got more in common with like the Hans Christian Andersen stories, in that Tchaikovsky took these fairy tale elements and kind of mushed them together to make his own thing.
Yeah, because contrary to popular belief, it's not actually specifically based on a particular fairy tale. It's just got such fairy tale vibes that people think of it as that. Like, there's ideas of what stories it might have been inspired by, but there's no like concrete Swan Lake story.
It's like the OSP, you take a bag of tropes, pull out a couple, and you got yourself a fairy tale.
Yeah, basically. One of my notes was, I really hope this is anti-foot fetish fuel, to be honest, but probably not.
Oh my god, yeah, it's so weird. Like, for one thing, Nina has better feet than most ballerinas have. Ballerina feet are the most terrifying thing to me.
Like, the only thing I could think of that's worse is maybe women who have had their feet bound. That's about it.
Oh, yes, absolutely, those are worse. Yeah. And my prayers go to whoever plays Wu Zetian in the Iron Widow movie.
Yeah.
But for Nina specifically, like, I'm sure some weirdo gets off to, like, every time she peels her toes apart. Okay, I don't know how to think about the one where her toes are all fused together. But apparently, like, it became a common thing that Natalie would have trouble with her left toe needing to be restrapped, to the point where they just started calling it a portmanteau situation.
Oh my god. Oh,
A+ wordplay.
Indeed, but also poor Natalie.
Like I said, she was killing herself over this movie.
I mean, yeah.
And it was so good that she is, I think, the last person to get an Oscar for a horror movie.
Yeah, that is another thing. Like, people don't like to admit it because, you know, we don't like to admit that quote-unquote classy movies can be horror movies, but this is 100% a horror movie.
Yeah, they didn't market it for exactly that reason.
Yeah, but it's BS, and good for Natalie for winning it anyway. It's such bullshit how horror movies don't get the respect they deserve, because yeah, of course you got the schlocky stuff, but you've also got really amazing classics, and it's, as a horror fan, I'm offended.
Also, like, trolling through IMDb right now, and the piano player, the one who tells Nina to get a life,
yeah,
that's Lipsinka.
I feel like
it's the drag queen Lipsinka.
Oh, that is incredible. Explains the sass.
Yeah, and I mean, there are parts of this movie that are just ripe for drag. I don't follow drag extensively, but
positive someone has done it. Editor Jasmine here. The Google image search alone was ripe with images. Also, there was literally an episode of RuPaul's Drag Race that was called Black Swan, Why It Gotta Be Black, so yeah, we were right.
I mean, the makeup alone. Unfortunately, the closest I've ever seen is like that SNL sketch where Jim Carrey is doing bad drag.
Oh.
That sketch has not aged well.
No. Honestly, I'm glad you brought that up, because yeah, just the Black Swan look alone with the red eyes, I'm just like, oh, how did you know this was exactly my kind of imagery?
The makeup design that also launched 1,000 dark Padme fanfictions.
Oh, that does not surprise me at all.
I mean, all you need to do is add, like, the little scar of remembrance down her lip, and bam, you're done. You're good.
Yeah, I see it. I do see it. God. Oh god, am I gonna really go down that rabbit hole now? I think I might end up down that rabbit hole. And I also do really want to talk about Lily as a character, because I just find her really fascinating, partially because of the sense of unreality with this whole thing, but also by all accounts, what few times I do think actually happened, in spite of the fact she is meant to be the Black Swan, it's meant to represent that kind of evil side of it. She seems perfectly sweet to her, really. Like, perfectly fine human being, actually really supportive and absolutely magnetic in like every scene. Like, you see Nina just staring at her all the time. It's just like, yeah, no, I could see why you're questioning things about yourself because of her dancing and just being charming and laughing.
I actually think Lily's meaner than you give her credit for. Like,
Fair.
I was not cool with her whole, oh my god, did you have a Leslie wet dream about me? It's like I know this was the 2010s, and so that was kind of a thing, but
her wording could have been better, yeah, but
it's not just that. It's that she has this sort of like passive aggressive cool kid luring you into smoking because they're peer pressuring you kind of thing. And like, I feel like Nina would kind of understood that she was queer even before Lily came onto the scene, because I genuinely think that she is to some extent attracted to both Beth and Veronica for very similar reasons. And the reason I think she turns to fixate on Lily is because Thomas is fixated on Lily.
Interesting. And you're not wrong, like there are definitely moments where she does kind of come off passive aggressive, but on the other hand, Nina isn't as nice as she wants to present herself as either, so, which doesn't excuse it necessarily, but also part of me is just like if I had the sense that someone had done that, I also would have been like, I would also have that question. I'm not sure if I'd say it out loud, but
yeah, like the whole conversation around, did you tell Thomas about me breaking down after he left? Like, that's a great moment for Nina as a character, because like, as a habitual people pleaser, the last thing you ever want to be is a problem.
For sure.
They're both right to an extent. Like, Lily was doing a nice thing by trying to help her not succumb to a nervous breakdown, but it was also not something that should have been done behind her back.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you really do get the sense that Lily, like, this is clearly not her whole life like it is the other dancers. Like, she's perfectly cool with being late. She is devouring that burger. This is
that tattoo.
That tattoo.
How is she allowed to have that tattoo?
I don't know, but I love it. Or I don't know, maybe that's also not actually real. Who knows? Like, because you're right, it would make a whole lot of sense for her to have that tattoo and be part of the company. But maybe that's just another thing that Nina's hallucinating, because, she's got swans on the brain.
It feels like very cool girl shorthand, so well, yeah. I think that it's real personally, because they put in the effort to like show it even when Lily's in costume as a little swan. There's a smattering of makeup over it, but not enough to hide it.
I mean, I feel like the cheap seats definitely won't be seeing it, but you're right. It's all about coding. Like, pretty much everything about her is very much trying to be the cool girl. Well, she's not trying to be. She's effortlessly cool. That's part of the whole deal there. That is what the movie is trying to do, basically. I guess the point I'm trying to make is, obviously, she is not, quote-unquote, after her like Nina feels like she is. And I think it's just a matter of her, at least partially, feeling bitter about the fact she's making her rethink how she has lived her life so controlled and so trying hard to be perfect and wrapping her whole life in ballet. There's a very particular kind of person who can't stand it when someone has lived more freely than them.
I don't want a sequel, but at the same time, like, a little novel of Nina, like, going on an eat, pray, love kind of thing. Maybe she went to France, found some nice lesbians there or something.
That'd be nice. And also,
and she's a performance artist on the street now.
That would be really neat. She could talk about her experience. That would be fascinating. Do a performance art piece on that. AO3, get on that.
And you know what? Shout out to Matty Labatzik, the cinematographer, because with the number of mirrors in this movie, he had to be really, really careful not to let his camera show.
As well. Absolutely. I mean, obviously, the shots where it looks like her reflection is looking somewhere else is obviously all CGI and stuff like that, but like still, you're right, like miracle work that this movie looks as fantastic as it does.
Thinking back to our Bound episode, like this is another one of those movies that's timeless until you see the phones.
Yeah, the flip phone, I was just like, oh right.
And the little MIDI tone of the Swan Lake theme.
I know, it's just like, oh, that's right, we used to have ringtones.
It's over now. Like, another movie that probably could not be said today, but you know, we'll see what the workshopped version of the musical looks like.
Should we talk more about Tama? Because we've touched upon our visceral anger of how much I want to murder this man, how much I want to unleash Medusa onto this man. Like,
what's fucking annoying is that the scene where Nina goes to ask for the part, and he's like, no, I already cast Veronica, and she's like, okay, like, a man with any logic in his brain would be like, well, that's where it stops, and I've avoided a potential scandal. But no! He's like, you're not gonna try at all? You're not gonna try to seduce me because you're in here with that sultry red lip?
He is just so convinced of his own power over these girls and how badly they want to impress him. And that is really what just permeates the whole movie. And I want to murder him. I definitely think, other than just Nina's own poor mental health, I think we could hold him most responsible for everything bad that happens in this movie.
I wonder how much of a chicken and an egg situation it is with Beth. Like, was Beth always like that? Or is he just used to Beth being like that, so he assumes now that all women are like that?
That is a fair question. I get a sense that Beth wasn't always like this. I really do get the sense that he just wrung her out like an old dishcloth, basically. And he is perfectly fine doing that with more and more girls. And just when they please him and make him look good, heaping them with praise. Like, I'll admit, if you saw the end of the movie out of context where he's praising Nina for doing such a good job, you would almost be forgiven for believing him to be sincere and being the prince that she keeps on seeing him as. But no, he's just happy that she made him look good and that his attempts to mold her into exactly what he wanted was successful, except, you thought.
I think there is at least some respect between the two of them as artists. Like, I'm not saying he's not a total sack of shit, because he is, but, like, he's in his own head about how much of an artist is, and I think he did recognize that Nina has the same passion for this that he does. And so, in that respect, it's not just that he's a sexual predator, it's that he's also an artist in search of perfection. He's just working on a different interpretation of what perfection is.
Yeah, let me be clear. I'm not saying that he is aware of what a creep and predator he is, because let's face it, people like that rarely are. But it was more just a matter of he is so obsessed with what he thinks is necessary for this. Like, he is so obsessed with making the art and using his power to make the art. And hey, if he gets to fuck beautiful young women as a result, he's perfectly happy to do that as well. And he has no self-awareness of how critically creepy he is.
I don't think he fucked Lily. I don't think he actually fucked any of them. I think it's more insidious than that, because he knows that that would be crossing a line.
That is a good point.
Thank God Harvey Weinstein is not attached to this movie in any way.
Thank God, indeed.
He has this energy. I don't know how to explain it. It's like he kind of realizes he can get the same results out of fucking with their minds as he could by just fucking them with his body.
Yeah.
And one of them is much less likely to get him #canceled.
You know, that's a really fair point. I could believe that. And if anything, him dangling the constant mentions of sex, in this instance anyway, who knows if he does that with any other role. For one thing, if this was your average office, he'd still get fired for sexual harassment. Maybe he just gets off enough on just the thought of it that he doesn't need it as long as he has them in his control, which again, he really thought he did for a moment before he realized she was bleeding.
Honestly, like, I'm surprised he didn't, like, tell Nina after she did the masturbation homework and is like, okay, now your new assignment is to get David to fuck you.
It would not surprise me if that was a deleted scene, to be honest.
Like, it kind of... I want to reiterate again that Nina is gay. She's so gay. Like,
she's very, very gay.
She has Sebastian Stan flirting at her. Yes. And she can't do anything about it. Even when she's fucking high.
Yeah, that's a really good
Like,
point.
That's another point against Lily in my book, is the fact that she drugged Nina without consent.
I'm pretty sure she ended up saying yes to the pill, actually, if I remember correctly.
It's so unclear, because afterwards Nina comes back to the studio, just like, you put something in my drink. I mean, that might just be Nina not remembering that she agreed to it, but...
It could be, like, a combination of it. Like, I kind of read it as her kind of trying to save face, and also probably not quite realizing how much it was gonna hit her. Like, because I do remember she did end up taking the pill willingly, which... irresponsible on both their parts, honestly. But yeah, it's so funny because I was thinking of talking about that scene too, because I think there's just the perfect encapsulation of this whole movie as a movie and a Swan Lake story is when she's describing the plot of the ballet to Sebastian Stan. He's just like, so a happy ending then, and she's all, it's beautiful actually. Like, if that isn't the perfect foreshadowing of everything wrong with how Nina sees her life. She's so convinced that you can only find beauty through pain. And I mean, in a way, I guess the story of Swan Lake is kind of about that. Like, any story where we're kind of romanticizing someone sacrificing themselves for love or for freedom or for anything, like any kind of self-sacrificial story, we do kind of have a nasty tendency of romanticizing it, even though in reality it's like, like, no matter what you're dying for, you're still dead.
I actually want to push back on the notion that Thomas has about the whole virgin whore dichotomy in regards to the Black Swan.
Go for it.
And this might just be me having grown up with Swan Princess and Barbie of Swan Lake as my primary introduction to this, but if you ask me, the Black Swan and the White Swan should not be as different, at least not when interacting with the prince, because what struck me as the tragedy of it is that the facsimile was so convincing that it was genuinely an effective ruse, as opposed to, this worked because he horny.
And that's a very fair point. It's a very fair read of it. Like, I can see why, especially someone like Thomas, like, going for that interpretation, but you're not wrong. Like, I never actually thought of it that way. Isn't it crazy? How, because I feel like, in general, like, cultural osmosis does kind of make it out that they're diametric opposites, really. Like, that's the whole idea that they're opposite colors and such.
I mean, I think the opposite color has more to do with making sure the audience knows that this is different.
No, for sure. But, that people will take the color symbolism and run with it. I do think there's merit in both interpretations, even if interpretation that they run with this production is, of course, super sexist and problematic. It's part of why Shami and I went the direction we did. We wanted to kind of address the fact that, hey, these two ladies should not have to be enemies. Like, you're both kind of getting manipulated here, which in a way is kind of what Nina could have learned if this wasn't meant to be a horror movie. Honestly, in my notes I did mention how that one line about her, confronting Lily after her dream, like, I wonder if anyone's ever edited clips of this movie into a rom-com trailer. I feel like someone must have. Because in another movie that absolutely would have rom-com energy of her being embarrassed when she realized that, no, that didn't actually happen. Oops.
Don't give me ideas.
Or what?
Or I'll make you pay for it someday. I don't know when, and I don't know how, but I will.
Okay, then.
I will show up when you are in the hospital, and I will give you back all the crap that I've stolen from you, and then I'll take a nail file and I'll stab your face with it.
Oh my god, dang, okay. That went dark.
For legal purposes, this is a joke.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, that scene was brutal. No matter how you read it, it was brutal.
I mean, this might be a draft of a book I haven't finished writing talking, but you know what? Fuck it. Maybe Nina and Beth go off together and they're in therapy together and they trauma bond that way, and, you know, now they're a nice little May-December lesbian couple.
I'm here for it. I'd read that. I gotta wonder, are there any theories of somehow Tama being the one who actually pushed her into traffic? I could see that being a theory. Considering the fact we don't actually see what happened.
I mean, I think he might have, like, said something that pushed her over the edge, but
yeah, that too.
Again, I feel like he's smart enough not to do anything that would get him in that level of trouble. Like, when he's quote-unquote seducing Nina by aggressively kissing her and groping her during the rehearsal, he can get away with that because Nina's not going to talk, because Nina's terrified of getting into trouble.
Yeah, poor Nina.
I hope everybody enjoyed being in this ballet company, because it's definitely over now.
Oh yeah. And we're about to take our bows too, but first, with that all said, why does Swan Lake endure?
Part of it, I think, is just Tchaikovsky. It's only the one tune in this case that really, really got popular, but the tune's a banger, so it's really easy to just keep catching on to it. And also, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, the visual distinction of the black and the white swan, that's just too good to not indulge in it. And it also probably helped that, like, people started taking tropes from this and using it in other things. Like, when Little Mermaid pulled the Vanessa shit, and it got to the point where people then started accusing Swan Princess of copying the Little Mermaid. Like, no!
Yeah.
That's not how it happened. Things don't happen in the order of you perceive them.
Nope.
Time is linear.
Yup. And yeah, that's a very fair point. I'm actually surprised it took us that long to make that connection. Good for us.
I think we can all relate to the idea of trusting someone with basically your life and then they fuck it up.
Or even just something important. Which, yeah, that is basically what the prince always does to her. And I do think this kind of story does tend to really latch onto the cultural imagination because, like I said, we as a culture are just obsessed with sacrifice, especially for the sake of love or for freedom. Just the idea of this woman being so devastated that she kills herself because she was heartbroken. Like, we romanticize that so much. And of course, nowadays, we're a lot more inclined to be all, okay, but maybe we can, like, not.
He is not the love of your life!
Yeah, he's literally just a guy. Please. You're a swan.
I mean, over the years, there have been so many different endings of this fucking ballet.
Right.
At least 10 endings alone listed on...
Oh, I definitely want to hear about this now.
In the 1966 Rudolf Nureyev version, Rothbart takes Odette away and leaves Siegfried to drown in the storm he created, leaving Odette in captivity.
Oh.
In the 1986 version, also by Nureyev, Rothbart and Siegfried fight, Siegfried dies, and Rothbart takes Odette up into heaven. There are versions where Siegfried drowns himself with Odette. There are versions where the curse is broken, but the lovers are still taken up into heaven. There are versions where Siegfried just doesn't see Odette again after he commits himself to Odile, and it ends with him crying. There are versions where Siegfried tries to kill Rothbart with his crossbow, but then hits Odette.
Oh, so the one that
But that also breaks the spell, so they die. There's also versions where Rothbart and Siegfried die, and Odette is left with the curse broken, but, you know, her boyfriend's dead now.
Fascinating. So, I mean, yeah, there's no reason why there can't be more endings, apparently. This is just typical, apparently.
The Swan Lake multiverse!
I mean, honestly, no joke. One of the ideas I initially had for this podcast was to make it that I was, like, tracking different multiverses of all these stories. But that sounded too complicated. Like, that is really fascinating. Like, this is a very moldable story, clearly. And the moldable stories are the ones that tend to last.
Actually, I think I can sum it up really succinctly now that I'm thinking about it. This story endures because we're constantly evolving our position on the question of whether or not true love can conquer all.
Ooh. Couldn't have said it better myself. Shall we get into plugs?
Yes, we shall. Has Ire woken up yet?
Yes, they woke up just in time for Once Upon a Time.
All right, excellent. I am the host of 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the podcast where we explore all the ways George Lucas's flagship franchise surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us in the landscape of cinema. If you tune in there, maybe this movie will show up again at some point. Otherwise, you can find me bouncing around the internet as La Femme Fictionale, and please make sure to check out our Tumblr blogs as well. And also, happy Pride and call your representatives, because we still need a ceasefire and reproductive justice and protections for trans people and universal basic income, and I could keep going forever, but I won't.
Yeah, we don't have time for all of the problems of the world, unfortunately, but everyone do your best. And as always, you can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Favor Vieira. You could also follow the show on Twitter at IER Podcast. And if you would like to help us reach the next chapter of our story, please consider leaving us a review or rating us on the podcatcher of your choice, telling all of your friends and family about us. And even better, if you have room in your wallets, please consider donating to our Patreon, our Ko-Fi page, or just the support the show link below. Wrath Month will continue over the next few weeks with the video game Stray Gods, The Haunting of Bly Manor, and my Own Private Idaho, where we'll have our special guest Kyle Calgren back. And we also have some bonus goodies in the lineup soon. So please don't you dare miss it. And remember, stories gain power in each retelling.
So, happy ending then.
It's beautiful, actually.